This is my mini lecture on the third section of Chapter 3 of Principles of Psychology, namely pages 85 to 95. This concerns the brain and the nervous system. It begins with the nervous system. The nervous system being the complex communication network of the body that is composed of all the neurons being the communication cells of the body. The brain is the center of the nervous system that coordinates and regulates all body processes. In other words, the brain is the organ that pretty much controls the body. The nucleus is a term used by anatomists to refer to any collection of neuron cell bodies in the brain or spinal cord. The nucleus is also the DNA-containing command center of a cell, but in this regard, it is the collection of neuron cell bodies in the brain or spinal cord. The central nervous system is part of the nervous system that consists of the brain and spinal cord. The spinal cord is a cylindrical bundle of neurons and axons connected to the base of the brain. The brain, we've already gone over that, but believe me, it will come up again because this is focused very much on it. Speaking of which, the brain. Let's go deeper into it. The brainstem is a stalk-like core of the brain that controls vital functions such as breathing and heart rate and transfers information between the cerebrum, cerebellum, and spinal cord. More on the first two terms later. The thalamus is the top of the brainstem buried deep in the cerebrum, and which trades information with the cerebrum. The hypothalamus is the part of the brainstem beneath the thalamus, and it regulates many physiological processes. The cerebellum is the brain region attached to the brainstem, and it is involved in regulation of movement. To continue with the brain, the cerebrum is the brain region atop the brainstem that controls higher mental functions. It can get kind of confusing because there's a cerebellum and a cerebrum, but they're two distinct things. The cerebrum is mainly in charge of higher mental functions. The cerebral hemispheres are the left and right halves of the brain. So it's pretty much just dividing the brain in two, and one half is one hemisphere, the other is the other. It's kind of like the western and eastern hemispheres, or the northern and southern hemispheres, when referring to the globe. Cortexes. I decided to categorize these by lobes and cortexes because there are a lot of each. Are they necessarily all in the same area? No. And do they all relate to each other? Not necessarily. However, they are related. They all have one thing in common. Cortexes are vortexes. So the cerebral cortex is an outer covering of the cerebral hemispheres. It consists largely of nerve cell bodies and their branches. The prefrontal cortex is the frontmost part of the frontal lobes, which is involved in many of our most complex behaviors. The motor cortex is the backmost strip of the frontal cortex, and it controls movement, or at least contributes to the control of movement. It pretty much controls movement. The somatosensory cortex is the frontmost strip of the parietal cortex, and it receives touch information. So anything that you touch and gain information from the thing by touching it, that information comes through the somatosensory cortex. And the sensory cortex is several different regions of cortex devoted to analyzing sensory information. And now for the lobes. The frontal lobes are the section of cerebellum in front, just above and behind the eyes. The parietal lobes are regions of cortex behind frontal lobes. They are involved in touch, pain, and sense of body position. The occipital lobes or also known as the visual cortex, are the regions of cortex at the back of the brain, and they receive information from the eyes. And the temporal lobes are regions of cortex on the sides of the brain, and they receive information about smell, taste, sound, and are critical for understanding language. Now for more brain parts, because the brain is a very complicated organ and has a lot of parts to it, which makes sense because it's the command center of our body, and our body is very complicated. The corpus callosum is the main band of axons communicating between the cerebral hemispheres. The basal ganglia are a collection of interconnecting nuclei under cerebral cortex, nuclei meaning brain nuclei, as in the nucleus or the collection of cell bodies in the brain, and they help control body movement. The limbic system is a collection of nuclei under cerebral cortex involved in learning, emotions, and sensory processing. The hippocampus is the section of the limbic system involved in permanent memories and is responsible for the permanent memories, and the amygdala are the nuclei in each temporal lobe. They are key in producing and recognizing fear. So, when you have nightmares at night, or you see a shadow and are afraid of it, you can blame the amygdala. So, what has control over your body? Each side of the brain controls the opposite side of the body. So, the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body, and the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body. Like that. And hemispheric specialization, or hemispheric lateralization, is the tendency for one side of the brain or the other to perform certain complex tasks. Easy, right? And now for nerves and very particular nervous systems. Nerves are bundles of axons that carry information to and commands from the central nervous system to the rest of the body. So they carry information from the rest of the body to the central nervous system and carry commands from the central nervous system to the rest of the body. The peripheral nervous system includes all the nerves and neurons outside the brain and spinal cord. So, in other words, it's the not central nervous system. The somatic nervous system is responsible for sensory information and motor commands. These all link together, obviously, because it's all one system. Autonomic nervous system is the system that is not under our conscious control. The sympathetic nervous system is responsible for activating the body for action, and it is part of the autonomic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system prepares the body to relax and recuperate. In other words, it pretty much does the opposite of the sympathetic nervous system. And they're both part of the autonomic nervous system. And that is the end of this great lecture on the very complicated system that commands our body. Thank you for paying attention.